Deep beneath the dark ocean, a massive monster has been sleeping quietly for over 3 centuries now. The Cascadia fault line lies waiting deep under the sea, ready to rise and cause destruction. Geological pressure builds to the limit, causing the Earth's crust to begin cracking wide open violently. A deep roaring sound echoes, tearing through the silence and stirring up thousands of tons of sand. Above ground, the city of Vancouver is still immersed in the peaceful sleep of an early morning. Flocks of seagulls along the coast suddenly fly in chaos, screaming miserably as a warning sign. Suddenly, the ground shakes violently, and high-rise buildings begin to sway in a truly terrifying manner. The glass windows of skyscrapers shatter, falling onto the street surface like a storm of sharp ice. The iconic Lions Gate Bridge twists and breaks in two, throwing cars into the deep sea below. Panicked crowds flee on the cracked streets, while screams echo everywhere in the chaotic city center. But the real nightmare begins when the seawater suddenly recedes hundreds of meters from the shore. From the horizon, a pitch-black wall of water stands tall and slowly advances towards the shore. The massive tsunami wave, as high as a 10-story building, completely blocks out the sunlight instantly. Air raid sirens sound in vain, drowned out by the deafening roar of the approaching water. Millions of tons of angry seawater smash into the embankment, crushing everything in a split second. Cars are swept away like toys, crashing violently into the collapsing buildings in the floodwater. The entire beautiful coastal city is submerged under the murky and cold floodwaters in an instant. A desperate man tries to cling to a traffic light pole amidst the fast-flowing water current. There is no escape for humanity when the ocean decides to reclaim what was lost forever. This is the worst-case scenario that could happen when the Cascadia fault line finally wakes up. 15 minutes before the apocalypse, the coast of Tofino looks deceptively calm under the warm morning sun. Local surfers enjoy the small waves, completely unaware that the ocean floor beneath them is about to snap. But nature is always more sensitive than humans when abnormal signs begin to appear all around them. A pack of wolves near the forest howl in long, fearful cries and run away in panic. The sky suddenly turns a strange gray color as the air pressure changes abruptly and feels heavy. Deep underground 30 kilometers, the Juan de Fuca plate has slipped past its limit of endurance now. An unprecedented loud explosion echoes under the sea, releasing energy accumulated for centuries in a split second. The magnitude 9.2 mega earthquake begins to strike the mainland with brutal and destructive power. The ground shakes violently, making it impossible for pedestrians to keep their balance and stay standing up. The shelves in the supermarket collapse, burying the aisles in a chaotic mess of broken products. The underground gas pipeline system fractures, creating terrifying columns of fire erupting from the cracked Earth's surface. At the Tsunami Warning Center, data display screens turn red to signal a critical emergency alarm. A scientist looks at the seismic chart and realizes the worst thing has actually happened right now. The sea surface begins to show strange phenomena as water recedes from the shore at breakneck speed. Fish that were swimming are suddenly stranded on the sand, struggling in desperation as the water leaves. Some ignorant people run to the beach to pick up the seafood that has just been exposed. They do not know that the ocean is just pulling back to wind up for a death punch. The ground continues to shake ceaselessly, cracking the vital roads leading out of the city extensively. The wooden buildings typical of this region begin to tilt and collapse one by one very slowly. High-voltage power poles fall onto the road, emitting deadly blue electric sparks in the falling rain. The tsunami warning siren finally sounds, but it sounds truly weak and too late for everyone there. People begin to panic extremely, abandoning their vehicles to run on foot to higher ground immediately. But the ground beneath their feet has liquefied, turning into slushy mud, swallowing their footsteps instantly. A large crack runs along the coast, separating a part of the mainland and pushing it seaward. The seabirds have disappeared completely, leaving the sky empty and terrified silence hanging over everything. The fishing boats far offshore begin to feel the abnormal rising and falling of the ocean swells. They do not know they just rode on the back of the tsunami monster rushing towards land. Back on land, the shaking finally stops, leaving behind a desolate scene of ruin and destruction. People look at each other in shock, thinking the worst has passed with the earthquake ending. But from the horizon, a white streak is growing larger, carrying the death sentence for everyone. The white streak offshore turns into a massive wall of water swallowing the entire sky instantly right now. The 30-meter-high tsunami wave moves forward rapidly with the incredible speed of a jet plane. Ancient pine forests, hundreds of years old, are snapped like toothpicks before the immense hydraulic power. The small coastal town of Tofino is completely wiped off the map in just a few seconds. Underwater houses are crushed into debris, spinning wildly inside a giant meat grinder of turbulent water. A deafening roar echoes loudly as millions of tons of water crash into the steep vertical cliffs. The deadly wave does not stop, snaking through the Strait of Juan de Fuca to attack Vancouver. The narrow terrain of the strait causes the water mass to compress and rise many times higher. Residents in high-rise buildings in Vancouver watch in horror as death approaches them from the ocean. The shadow of the massive wave covers the entire city, blocking out the last light of sunlight. The Stanley Park seawall crumbles instantly when the massive volume of water crashes into it without mercy. The Vancouver Aquarium is destroyed, releasing sharks and marine life into the chaotic floodwaters of the city. Lionsgate Bridge groans and collapses completely, cables whipping into buildings like steel whips in the wind. Massive container ships are lifted by waves and thrown into the city center like toys by children. A cargo ship crashes violently into a luxury hotel, creating a terrifying explosion and massive structural damage. The iconic Canada Place with white sails is swallowed by black water and torn apart brutally instantly. Water floods into narrow streets at 80 kilometers per hour, sweeping away every obstacle in its path. Thousands of cars float aimlessly, crashing into each other, creating a deafening screeching sound of twisting metal. The ground floors of skyscrapers are breached by water pressure, tempered glass exploding outward in all directions. Floodwaters carrying mud and car wreckage destroy the luxurious interiors of the grand lobbies in seconds flat. Water pours down into SkyTrain subway stations, turning tunnels into deadly water pipes filled with debris quickly. Substations explode when flooded, creating bright fireballs on the water surface amidst the chaos of the flood. Debris forms temporary dams between buildings, causing the water level to rise even higher in the streets. Dead trees, billboards, and furniture float everywhere on the surface of the black, deadly water throughout the city. From above, Vancouver looks like a toy model thrown into a dirty bathtub filled with dark water. The famous Granville Island Market disappears completely under the layer of white foaming and murky seawater. The Silver Science World Sphere is half submerged, reflecting the scene of destruction surrounding it on all sides. BC Place Stadium is flooded by water, turning the green turf into a giant mud lake instantly. Survivors climb onto rooftops, trembling as they watch the water rising dangerously close to their feet below. A young woman holds her child tightly, her eyes staring blankly at her beloved city collapsing down. An old man tries to call desperately in vain as cell towers have already collapsed and fallen. But the nightmare does not stop there, as a second and even higher wave is approaching fast. The new wave turns floating debris into weapons, puncturing reinforced concrete walls with terrifying force and speed. An old apartment building, unable to withstand water pressure, collapses, taking hundreds of lives down with it. Dust from the collapsing building mixes with water spray, forming a thick fog obscuring the view completely. Fire burns fiercely on the water surface at oil leak sites, creating a hellish scene of destruction. Daylight begins to fade away, giving way to cold darkness and extreme fear for everyone left alive. Vancouver is now an isolated island, completely cut off from the outside world by the massive flood. The smell of gas, mud, and salty seawater blend together to create the scent of death everywhere. Nature has won absolutely, turning the modern metropolis into a giant garbage dump in just 1 hour. Total darkness covers everything as night falls completely, turning the city into a cold and silent grave. The power grid across Western Canada collapses, plunging millions of people into absolute darkness and utter despair. At the hospital, backup generators are flooded with water and stop working immediately in the dark basement. Doctors are forced to use phone flashlights to maintain life for critical patients in the dark corridors. Vancouver International Airport transforms into a vast lake with dozens of airplanes submerged deep under the water. The control tower falls silent forever, cutting off all communication with incoming flights approaching the ruined city. On the high hills, soaking wet crowds huddle together around small flickering fires in the cold night. Panic turns into violence as people fight each other for every single bottle of precious clean water. Looters take advantage of the darkness to smash and rob the remaining shops on the higher ground. The police force is completely helpless because roads are cut off and vehicles are damaged beyond repair. Night temperatures drop deep, and the bone-chilling cold begins to claim the lives of the weak elderly. SOS signals are flashed from flashlights, and white cloths wave from the rooftops of the high-rise buildings. Chemical plants rupture, leaking toxic substances that mix into the black floodwaters spreading through the ruined city. Uncontrolled fires begin to spread rapidly from one building to another without anyone there to stop them. The broken bridges now look like giant dinosaur skeletons exposing themselves in the heavy rain and darkness. With no internet and no news, they feel like they are the last people left on Earth. As the faint morning light appears, the true scale of the disaster is finally revealed to everyone. The calm water surface is covered with debris and personal items, creating a haunting picture of death everywhere. Survivors look down at their city, which is now nothing more than a dead swamp of destruction. Human civilization has been wiped out overnight, giving way to primitive wilderness and the power of nature. This disaster is a brutal reminder of the tiny position of human beings in the vast universe. Will humanity learn the lesson, or will it continue to sleep on victory once again in future? Because nature never negotiates, it only waits for the right moment to take everything back from us.